Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're obviously going to talk about Sub-Zero, as the thumbnail says. I just want to go through a few things that I think a lot of people are misled by this character in a lot of ways. Some believe he is just like one of the best characters in the game, and in my opinion they are not wrong. He kinda is. And on top of that, some people only believe he has one strategy in this game, and that's the 50-50. But I'm here to tell you that that's not the case, and in this video I'm basically going to go through all the strategies that Sub-Zero players use, basically, and all the different types of Sub-Zero players that you may come across. Now, I'm not going to talk about his moves that aren't really that, that great, but so I'm not going to talk about moves like Arctic Trap, because those types of moves are kind of useless now. But as I get into it, I will go through more and more about what I'm talking about. So first of all, there's the people, when you go online, mainly Combat League, you go on there and people only play the 50-50 variation. So the first strategy we have is Sub-Zero over here. There's this, you run into these sorts of players in Combat League and whatnot, and the first type of player there is with Sub-Zero is the 50-50, the true believers of the 50-50, right? And that's either getting hit by this, the forward 2, or the back 3, which is a low. And they firmly believe in this. So, once they do that, they use the restand strategy, which is the old strategy, if people don't know. It's a very old strategy that came out basically like day one. And so this is what happens, right? They do, they catch you with the overhead, and then they do low into ice ball immediately, right? Whoops, sorry guys. And then I do this, and then you get strong with the low, so I guess overhead, you get strong again. That's the old strategy, and that's doing the low and the overhead immediately after this, right? So let's say I do this, and then I do this, right? So that's straight away, and then I do this straight away, right? So you're immediately having to guess. And the reason this is the old strategy is because it's avoidable. So when you have, say I hit you with that overhead, right? And then I hit you with the low. So it comes out in 13 frames. And then if I choose to do the overhead, it comes out in 19. So you have a 6 frame gap where you can actually fuzzy guard both of them. Okay guys, so I've set Sub-Zero here to obviously hit me with an overhead, which I'm gonna let him do. And then let's say he freezes me, right? And then he's going to do the whole restand strategy, which is the old strategy. I'm going to show you guys why it is the old strategy. So I have him to do the restand and then do the low or the overhead. So that's the overhead blocked. That's a low blocked. Low blocked again. Overhead blocked again. Low blocked again. So as you guys can see, this strategy does not work anymore because there's fuzzy guarding. People call it fuzzy blocking, I just call it fuzzy guarding because it's the easy way to say it. But fuzzy guarding basically removes that 6 frame, like that 6 frame gap allows you to either block the low or the overhead in that specific scenario where he's immediately going to do the low or the overhead, and you can adjust your blocking stance in that 6 frames so that you never get caught by either one of the two. And then another thing, obviously these sorts of players they obviously pick the amplified ice ball, and they may not pick cold shoulder, they'll pick something else because cold shoulder is a useless move. And obviously they also, there's players that just do this, right? They just go back and throw ice balls. Now I get that it is frustrating, but it's also very easily avoidable. Now, by saying avoidable, I don't mean do this, because obviously then he just does his slide. I'm not going to just pretend it's a slide for now. Right, you're obviously, if you're ducking and then I just do this, and then you're going to get caught, and if you're pressing a button, you know, it's a crushing blow for him. Or if he's loaded up enough crushing blows for the slide. Now, moving on, there's another type of player, of Sub-Zero players, that also believe in the 50-50, but they have another element to their 50-50, and these are the people that make it very frustrating to play it online. So obviously they still have, you know, forward 2, back 3, nothing has changed, right? And I'm going to change my variation. So most people don't use the first variation anymore. They usually use customs. So as you saw before, he was doing about 25%. So if he hits you with, you know, oh my god, I haven't done this combo in a while. It's not even that hard, but so now he's doing closer to 30% because of this one move, Rising Ice, right? So most people actually pick this move over the amplified ice ball. So going back to the strategy, they still have the overhead, they still have the low, but then they mix in the throw. Now obviously the throws in this game are 10 frames, and the overhead comes out in 19 frames. So you automatically, by the time, I'm not sure the exact frame the axes are visible. It might be on frame, I'm going to take a guess, either like 10 or 11. It might be even later than that, 12. But anyway, so you have a 10 frame throw, right? And then you have a 19 frame overhead. If people actually use the whole restand strategy in this manner, so let's say I hit you with the low, and then I go to restand, and then you think you're gonna fuzzy guard, I'm gonna throw you. And because you're fuzzy guarding, you're expecting a low or an overhead, but truth is, because you're blocking, you're gonna get thrown. And even though fuzzy guarding is effective, it doesn't work against Sub-Zero, and that's why I say the first strategy was the old strategy. And let me show you why. So he does this, right, and then he delays the low by, I don't know, like 5 frames, right? And 5 frames would be like the magic number, because you would be down blocking like this after the restand and then standing up, and then you have that 6 frame window, right? But the 5 frame delay on the low, as you're getting up to block the overhead, you're getting hit with a delayed low as well. So that's another thing that you have to worry about online with this other strategy that Sub-Zero players have. And then again, of course, there's the old, you know, 1 second. There's the old stagger of the back 3 because it's only -4. And because of Rising Ice alone, I'm going to talk about Rising Ice real quick. Rising Ice alone gives Sub-Zero his winning edge, and that's damage. Before, when he hit you with a 50-50, he wasn't doing much damage, and usually the character you're playing against can do the same or more damage. That is either breakable or unbreakable. But in this, even though it might be breakable, you're still getting hit with some fairly decent damage mid-screen, right? So the low is nearly 30 and the overhead is 28, right? But the thing with Rising Ice is when he gets you into the corner, this is where Sub-Zero is at his best. Very similar to MKX meta, not MKX Sub-Zero, the meta. It's the low and the overhead that wins him here, and it's... I'm not sure if this is the optimal combo anymore, right? But he's hitting you with solid like 30%. Let's just do that, right? So we have, I'm not sure if that's the optimal, I'm pretty sure there's an optimal to do 50%, but clearly you can see if you guess wrong, you're getting hit for 45% in the corner at least, or the optimal is 50, and your opponent, if they guess right, they're only going to hit you for like, you know, anywhere from 25 unbreakable to 40% unbreakable. It depends on the character, obviously, but either way, even if you guess right, like when you guess right, you're doing more damage than they would do to you, and if you guess wrong, they are doing less damage than you would do to them. So it's always in Sub-Zero's favor when he has you in the corner. And let's move on to the next strategy now. The next strategy is the Sub-Zero player that hates the 50-50, the forward 2 and the back 3. They are not many of these players, but they do exist. And these players are really good at using their down 3s, you know. I'm not sure how, yeah, I haven't played Sub-Zero in so long, what his down 3 range is like. That's probably the max range. Yeah, it is. And then there's his ridiculously amazing down 4, which has always been good. And these sorts of players, they always make you play Sub-Zero's game, which is, you know, doing this. If he jumps, if you jump, he can do this. If he reads, he can do this. But they can also do a standing 2 as an anti-air, which isn't great, but sometimes it works. And then, you know, he uses his back 3 stagger, which is also, like I was talking about before with the other strategy, they also use a back 3 stagger, but then they use down 1 to take their turn back. Because it's only -4, you know, they're using a 6 frame down 1. You've got to react in basically, you know, 10 frames, which is doable, but it is pretty hard online. Offline, like, it's pretty easy, but offline it's absolutely ridiculous to do. And either, you know, players nowadays, and this is like an old philosophy with a lot of older players, and shout out to a lot of the older players that were around in MK9. A lot of the footsies back then was, you know, doing that sort of stuff, you know, backing away. I remember Sonya used to have that military stance where, you know, it would really hunt you down, but, and then, you know. But anyway, talking about MK11, some Sub-Zero players will do a down 4 like this, you know, and then backdash, and then when you try and use, you know, something to like poke back or, you know, advance on them, they would backdash and then catch you with this back 1, which is a great whiff punish, right? So they do this, and then you just catch them with this. So I'm gonna set this up. So I've set Sub-Zero to do this strategy specifically, so, you know, down 4 or down 3 into backdash, and when the opponent tries to use a move that's really quick to take his turn back, you will see what happens. So obviously I'm using Fusion's back 1. Right, most people would use, you know, back 1 straight away. And then obviously I'm getting with punish for using my back 1. Now obviously a character like Fusion has a lot of answers to this. Like I literally just showed you guys, he can backdash into, you know, back 2. He can do forward 3. He can, you know, he can even do this if he wants to. You can get a crushing blow if you use that variation, which I do. But as you can see, Sub-Zero basically makes you think outside the box. It's not that much of outside the box, you know, thinking. So you know, if you're good at using footsies, you can actually blow him up for this. So using this straight away doesn't work. And yeah, so as you can see, there's ways to blow up his back 1 with punish, and then, you know, backdashing after down 4 and all that. So you really have to think outside the box when you play Sub-Zero, or this strategy specifically. So let's say you're playing a character with, you know, slower pokes and all that sort of stuff, and for this I've picked Sindel specifically, and although she's got great range on her pokes, you'll see what happens. Her down 4 doesn't reach, her down 3 just reaches. Sometimes I'll whiff though. Yeah, most of the time it does. And then obviously your down 1 doesn't reach. So now you're forced to play his game, where you can actually, if you're good, you can actually, you know, out-footsie him, but it's weird because you'd have to play, you know, really on point to do this. And let's say you just backdash, you can also do that. Yeah, like I said, you have to really think outside the box when you play Sub-Zero. You can't just go in and attack, because it just doesn't work. Okay, so I've set Sub-Zero here to do the same thing, except a different character. And I picked Liu Kang for specific reasons. So when somebody pokes you, your first instinct is to, you know, take your turn back with the fastest mid possible. And let me show you why this doesn't work. So let's just do this. I'm not using my fastest mid, but I'm using forward 4, which is 11 frames, which is very quick. And you can see it's not reaching, nothing, still nothing, right? I use back 1, obviously it's not going to reach because the range on back 1 is abysmal. Now, as a Liu Kang player specifically, you can do a lot of things here. You can actually poke him back, because you have a fairly good down 4. You can actually down 3 him as well, because you have a good down 3. But my point is, he forces you to play the footsies game, right? He literally forces you to play it, otherwise you're just going to get blown up for it. So brain dead Liu Kang players just can't get around this, because they actually have to use their brain and actually, you know, have to play footsies. Then there's players, right? This is a strategy that I use. It doesn't always work, but I'll just show you guys so all the Liu Kang players out there know that you can actually do this. I've gotta love it when up 2 doesn't come out sometimes. But yeah, you can always flawless block the next hit. again, just the up 2s and up 3s sometimes just don't come out. But anyway, yes, that is one way to deal with it. And there are other ways. I said you can actually pay footsies, you can actually play the goddamn game, rather than being a brain dead person who just, you know, tries to attack, and that's where Sub-Zero succeeds against a lot of people. Moving on to the next strategy. Now we have the best of the best players, right? Now I am not calling myself a good or one of the best Sub-Zero players, because I'm definitely not. But I do know how they strategize a lot of their strategies, you know, against a lot of opponents, even in a lot of matchups where Sub-Zero doesn't do that well. Sub-Zero actually can body a lot of characters. And so the first, let's just go through the entire strategy. This will take a while, but this is the best of the best Sub-Zero players. This is how they play, and you can really learn to adapt their playstyle and make it your own. And yeah, let's just get started. So you have the overhead, you have the low, right? And you have the throw. Now I've explained already that you can shimmy with the overhead and the throw, right? So that's a total shimmy. Good Sub-Zero players actually use this more often than not. And then, rather than using the low, they can either stagger the back 3 or they'll finish the entire string. I'm not used to doing this with Sub-Zero, so bear with me. But yeah, that's what good Sub-Zero players will do. They'll go, oh, I'm going to finish my string, right? And then no, it's not your turn anymore. So that's one thing. It makes you want to poke them instead of using your fast mid. So when you go to poke them, right, so let's just go, whoops. Now you can flawless block their down 1. You can whiff punish them, so let's go. Right. Because you're not fast enough, and you don't have the range, so then they might be able to down 3, and then they'll flawless block your down 3 or down 4, right? So that's the first mind game with Sub-Zero, is how to even take your turn back. I know it is like this with a lot of players, but even more so with Sub-Zero. And then instead of just using the actual 50-50, which is, you know, the overhead and the low, let me get rid of this custom reversal, and they'll actually use forward 2 as a whiff punish. Because of the range this move has, it will actually catch a lot of players in neutral. So it's not that you're doing this when you're getting hit, it's actually you're trying to stick out a button and he's catching you with this. That's what a lot of good Sub-Zero players are doing. So I'm over here, and then, you know, you get hit by the overhead. You're not even trying to like block the overhead or the low, you're just trying to play neutral, which Sub-Zero is forcing you to play. But in that, he hits you with a forward 2 because of the range the move has. So that's another strategy these really good Sub-Zero players use. On top of that, I say the best variation for Sub-Zero is the Air Polar Axe, the Creeping Ice, and the Rising Ice. The Rising Ice we've been through. The Air Polar Axe is literally just, you know, doing this and being annoying. So, and it frustrates a lot of players. I've seen it before. And oops. And look at this, it's -3. It's literally -3, -2, -3, -3, -2. Obviously if you do it a lot closer, you're unsafe. Look at that, +1. +1. You press a button, you're gonna get hit by slide, no matter what. Right, that's -2. That's +1 again. So that's why Air Polar Axe is also a very good move, and it's 1 slot, so it takes Sub-Zero's 3rd slot up. Now let's talk about Creeping Ice. Now I'm going to set the computer to flawless lock. As you can see, forward 2 into Creeping Ice completely jails. Let's say you don't flawless block the first forward 2, right? You are even if you guess right against this character, he's gonna be safe. And he doesn't have to use Creeping Ice like this because it's flawless blockable. He'll just finish the string, and then when you take your turn back, he'll flawless block you with punish you, etc. So, on top of that, even if you guess right, Sub-Zero still wins. No matter what. Even if they can't hit confirm their forward 2 into Rising Ice, they still get decent damage with this. And I'll just show you the type of damage they're dealing. That's 14%. 14% because you guessed wrong. That's a fair amount of health. And even if you guessed right, you achieved nothing. But Sub-Zero is completely safe, and he's used one of his options. So instead of being a 50-50, this character sort of forces you into like a 75-25 situation where no matter if you guess right or wrong, it's up to the Sub-Zero player on how the match turns out. And that's how powerful this character is. If this Sub-Zero player is on point, Sub-Zero is almost unbeatable. And obviously you've talked about his damage in the corner, talked about his down 3, his down 4, his back 1, his back dash into whiff punishing, flawless blocking your pokes and then your mids, and he makes you play footsies even though your character might be really bad at it, or you may not be good at it yourself, which you may need to improve. But that's Sub-Zero in a nutshell. Sub-Zero combines all these playstyles together, and he becomes unbearable to play online, because he's forcing you to play footsies. And then when he's forcing you to play footsies, you stick out a down 4 and he hits you with this, right? And then he auto shimmies you with the overhead, and then with the throw. Even he's back here and you press a button, you're still gonna get frozen, right? He's got safety. This character literally has everything, and that is what makes a good Sub-Zero player. Not just believing in the 50-50, not just having good footsies. It's combining all of those things together that makes Sub-Zero players unbearable, the very best of them. And it's really hard to play against, and unfortunately there are only some characters that can counter this strategy. That's it. But anyways, thank you guys for listening. Hope to see you guys in the next video.